can't see Nikki.
We're live.
All right, cool. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Mama. Hi, Facebook and YouTube. Right?
That's right. And thanks to everybody who is joining us. And thank you for coming today. My name is Debbie Griffing. I am a painter and a fiber artist, and I am the mother of this wonderful human being, Zoe Heller, and we're going to talk a little bit about our work today. Zoe, do you want to say anything about your work? You're a mixed media artist.
Yeah, my background and my focus in school was studio photography, but I like to also build tiny things, props, and I would say I'm a mixed media artist, and I like doing stop motions and involving like building other worlds, and studio photography is the main back of that though. So, and this is my lovely mother. So.
Okay. And you and I both like to build other worlds, don't we?
Yeah.
That's quite a bit of what my work is about, is creating different spaces to go into. And one thing I think that we both also have an interest in is, like we were talking about over the weekend, was an interest in very, very small things like insects and the cellular and minute aspects of life around us. And then also I'm very interested also in the commonality between the minuscule and the extremely large, like the universe and all those things in between. And I see that in your work too, is these fascinating, nice Marmite mug, Zoe, is the is all the life that's abounding around us. And you've been collecting lots of insects, like when we have gone canoeing and kayaking. Could you show one of your pictures with the bees on it?
Yeah, let me go into my series with bugs. Yeah, I think with your work, I think that's where a lot of my love has come from, is watching how you look at the world and kind of build these like tiny outer worldly places in your sketchbooks or in your paintings, and you're involving structures that are natural and unnatural, and that's kind of like what I like to work on too. But I think I take more objects from the man-made world and like incorporate it, like having cards, things like that. It's just and I'll share but
we also like the stories that go behind all these little things, like the bees and the bee dance, how they communicate with each other. It's kind of a crossing over the narrative science stories, where if you read into the science, if you follow insects at all, it's a pretty fascinating world and extremely creepy. But it's just it's very interesting.
With your work, you also like incorporate more like structures though, and I feel like you look outwardly towards like trees and landscapes more than, and I look more into like tiny insects and bugs and things like that. I'm pulling up
I think there's a lot of relationship between the organic forms and all of the man-made infrastructure and when I drive into work and I drive for 40 minutes down 71 and I see all of these lights overhanging the highway, and they seem so creature-like to me, and man-made things really are mimicking what's already out there in the organic world. And I just think it's really interesting, the relationship of the two. And in a lot of ways, I think that infrastructure is beautiful, and man-made objects and architecture and things like that are also beautiful, as is, you know, the organic world. And they're not two separate things. They kind of interact together in interesting ways.
Well, and I feel like with
So,
well, like we talked about on the weekend, you incorporated like you like those structures, and you incorporate chairs and like spaces that human bodies are also like kind of inject themselves in, and where we keep our bodies and stuff like that, right?
yeah, well, that's going into symbolism a little bit. I put a lot of imagery in that symbolism, and when your grandfather was sick, I used the chair as a symbol for home, and for it's a place where a body rests. And I did several paintings with chairs in them, with chairs floating up to heaven. Particularly with Dad, because he was sick, he was in it. I mean, there's so many people, and the people I work with, people with disabilities at my job, there's so many people that live their whole life in a chair. And so it's more than just a structure, it's an extension of their body. And so I see it as kind of symbolic of it's man-made, it's symbolic of the human condition in a way. But they're also beautiful objects. I mean, things that are functional are beautiful. And I think chairs are like that. And the other thing we talked about was skeletons and outer coverings, things that people use to protect themselves, and how insects have outer skeletons, and human beings are just soft and squishy. And all of our skeleton is on the inside. And I think that's something that's really kind of interesting too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like interesting because I feel like in both of our works we create these like little worlds that I mean, like your work especially, I feel like they're like these safe little worlds, or these like other little areas to escape from all of the stuff, and with bugs, and like having like creating homes almost to create shelter or just escape from the world. And like, yeah, we talked about bugs being able to have this like outward bubble, but like we're these like squishy human bodies, and kind of like,
yeah,
you know, we have to create these structures to protect us from, but outside of humans, like bugs have those structures built on their little bodies.
Yeah, well, they're carrying their house with them, their body.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the your props that are right behind you. Your brain and your
yeah. So this brain's one of the I like using found stuff or like repurposing stuff. So I made this brain candle out of like all of these. It's really bad. I'm not a candle maker, but I repurposed. I like melted down all of these like stubs of candles that I just have collected over the past like year, and melted them all down and put in dye, put it in this like brain mold that I found that I want to use for a future prop. But then this one, I recently did a photo of when I drove out to Ohio. I stopped in the salt flats, and this is a bow and arrow that wasn't found, but me and my dad, it was a toy that my dad had won me when we went to an arcade. And then I like to build on, I don't know if you can see that, but I like to build on top of toys before, and then kind of go in with photo manipulation. So I can bring up that one that I did and share the screen. on my Instagram.
So those two props are altered or look totally different when you're done photographing them and
well, so I am sharing the one that is this the prop that I've had in my hand, and I like to layer stuff and do like multiple different images on top of each other. So when I like work on top of work, it's not just building a prop, it's also like building it inside of Photoshop and digital painting and layering, things like that, which isn't what you do, but I feel like in a digital realm it's kind of similar, like building, you like to incorporate like a lot of stuff, like
we
paint, and like when you're building your dolls you use like old fabrics and buttons and all of these things, so I got inspiration from
I kind of live in two different worlds where I have work that's fiber based and they're their own little worlds in themselves, and then work that's two-dimensional.
Here's I'm gonna share the screen again so people can see what with your work. I feel like with you have like such, I don't know, like it's really interesting to see how your work has grown, because like you always made dolls, but when I was like smaller, you did a lot more painting, and now I feel like you're doing more textile stuff and doing stuff that's like involving like not just drawing. But then you have like
I'm trying to actually blend the two a little bit, so I'm not so I'm more of a one person than rather two different entities. I'm trying to bring some of the sewing into the two-dimensional work I do. But you know how I started making dolls? It's because I wanted to get a doll for you, Zoe, and I went to go buy one, and I decided I'd rather make it instead. And that just kind of brought this love of hand sewing and embroidery and using old fabrics and fabrics that mean a lot to me. And there you are, Zoe. There's one of the cicadas that I drew a long time ago. I drew a lot of cicadas when my father was sick. And it had to do with the cycle of life and the idea of rebirth, and cicadas were very symbolic of that.
What about like when you went through a phase of like having chickens and like all of your work and like birds? I mean, you still do. I feel like, well, the Cuba, that piece, like, computers. So fun. I brought up
some of those are your insect pictures that also look like outer space to me.
You said they look like outer space.
I think they look a lot like outer space, particularly when you do close-ups on them. Can you bring them up on the shared screen, Zoe? Some of your insect pictures. I think they're really good. I think those pictures are a really good example of how when you go down to the really minute scale of things, the similarity between like, nebulas and star clusters and all those, it's visually very, very similar. And I think it's just I don't know. It's something that I find fascinating. And one of the things that I really love about your work is that the closer you zoom into it, there's more, and you keep seeing more, and you keep seeing more. And I find work that interests me the most is the work where, as you get closer to it, you see more information rather than less. And I find that, that's what is compelling to me is as I get more information from the work of art as I get to a more intimate space with it. And I think that's something that's really beautifully done in your work.
Well, I like that goes back to like also, sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
I think it goes back into, like, this was my email series that I had done that I didn't share with anyone besides like the people who had signed up to receive these like art spam things. And like, I think going like inward is also creating that like shelter bubble that feels like safe to me when I'm sharing my work. And I really like like bugs are so weird. And they're so like interesting, like they just look like little aliens, and it really like takes me, like it reminds me how small I am in comparison, which I feel like you like too, like when you can escape and create these other worlds and like go be in nature or get into painting, like you zone out into like these, you can zone out and it just reminds you how small you are in comparison to like everything that
that's a portrait of your sister there. So introduce Ava. That's our sister. That's Zoe's sister, my other daughter, the younger scientist daughter. I think that this particular series makes me think of cocoons also. Those ripped areas are very much like nests and places for growth and the birth of things.
Well, I think like when you're looking so closely at life like that, I mean, and you too, like you've always like looked at bug wings and in nature and like chairs and where we keep our bodies, like it's hard not to focus on like what's wrapped up in it. Yeah, I'll stop sharing the screen.
No, I love your work, Zoe.
Well, I love your work. I feel But all of it can be found on both of our websites and our Instagrams. But I mean, I feel like I've taken a lot of like inspiration from how you look at the world and how you've taught me to look at the world, and how like you can feel like it's okay to feel small and in comparison to like mountains, but it's also okay to like realize how big you are in comparison to like the tiny creatures.
Well, it makes you humble, but also feel powerful. I think it's good to be always reminded about how small you are, but then also how powerful of an impact you can make. These protests that are going on this week are a good example of how powerful individuals can be. But I think that both ways of looking at things is important to combine them both. So you can't really be very powerful. It's an unbalance if you're feeling powerful, but you're not feeling how small and dependent you are at the same time. I think that's really important to keep those two things married together in a kind of a symbiotic kind of relationship. One thing that I think we also think about that's similar is the mind. Both you and I have worked with people with disabilities. We both had my mother and your grandmother go through a long sickness with Alzheimer's. And we have people in our family that have some mental health disabilities. And so I think we're both really aware of how the mind can create your space. And that's, again, that kind of creating your space, creating your own space, but from each person's point of view, the same space can look very different. A person with schizophrenia has a very different view of a room as a person with Alzheimer's, or a person with a developmental disability, or anybody. We all really view things differently. And I find that all really fascinating, but a bit unnerving at the same time. And I think that a lot of my work is kind of like, is really about that a lot these days, about and the thing that also I'm always reminded of as I get older is how your mind creates a space, but that space within that your mind can change. I mean, anything, working with people with traumatic brain injury, that your reality can really change. It's a fragile thing, we're walking on this earth, and what you feel is stable can be very shaken up very easily, but it also can be shaken into a beautiful place. Your mind can really, it can make the space a good or a bad space depending on how you want to look. And I'm getting really kind of squishy and feel goody and everything, but a lot of my work lately has to do with that mind space and the different ways the minds work.
Yeah. Well, and I think that though, like, and that shows in your art, like when I was talking, like when we were talking, when I was a kid, some of your paintings gave me nightmares because some of them were pretty dark. And the colors that you like, you still use, but you use in a different way now. But like at that time when I was younger.
So does this one give you nightmares?
I don't, that's not the one I was thinking of. The one I don't know if I can find on your Instagram. I'll look and see if you.
We don't need to scare people with my scary paint.
But anyways, like at that time, like I feel like you were going through a lot of pain with your mother, with my grandma, and it shows in your work. And I know it shows in my work because when I was doing the intimate art series, I was struggling with a lot. So you're like looking inward and you're using darker colors and and your work kind of gave me nightmares. I'm trying to see if I can find.
Sorry.
Like what I was.
But I made you dolls too, on the other hand, so you had something comforting to snuggle with. Although you girls told me the dolls were scary also. Shoot.
I don't remember. I don't specifically remember dolls being scary. I remember like it's like the faces that you did in your paintings. But like, do you feel like art and that kind of helps you like feel better, or like has been like, how has art moved with you working through life transitions like that? Because your work has changed. I mean, like you were like, when I was little, you were doing a lot more like figure, or like bigger faces and bigger figures, and like I feel like
I was doing more portraits.
Colors. Yeah.
I think that as I've gotten older, my paintings have gotten to be less about specific incidences and specific people, and more generalized in place and time. Like I did lots of portraits of my mother and of my dad, and now I brought in more landscape and more general spaces. I want to take a minute for a second to give our trivia question before I forget, because we have a trivia question, and the person that gets a question correct will get a $25 gift certificate to North Star, one of my favorite favorite restaurants. And so the question is, what is the art form that uses beeswax as a medium? So again, what is the art form called that uses beeswax as a medium? And again, that's $25 for a North Star gift certificate. One of the greatest restaurants. I love North Star. So
yeah, I think that's where we always
back to the conversation. What's that?
I said I remember that's where we'd always eat. The what is it? The peanut pad thai bowl or something.
You had the Buddha
I'm really
bowl.
hungry. I haven't had food for like a good minute. But
the one thing I wanted to bring up to that we haven't talked about is I just want to talk about a little bit about sketchbooks, because I really feel like they're a really great thing for people to enjoy using, and I've gotten really addicted to having sketchbooks. And so you carry one around, but it's more for notes, right?
Yeah. Well, I have like a tiny sketchbook, and I like journal in it more and doodle and kind of like have that be my. I can't paint or draw, so it's a space that no one can see my bad drawings and doodles.
Well, you are very good at drawing, and you're very good at that. But
yeah, I agree. I think they're good. They're like a good way to process things. Go ahead.
Yeah. I've just been thinking a lot about how much people spend time on their phone, and out in public, or if you have if you're waiting for something in a parking lot or at a traffic stop or whatever. I've turned into kind of being a compulsive sketchbook drawer, and I found that the more I have a sketchbook with me, the less I just turn to kind of time wasting things. And I found that it's really been useful to help me pay attention to the world around me more. This is I don't know if you remember when we in California, we went to Half Moon Bay. Is that where we went?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I got to where I'm taking sketchbooks with me everywhere to help document different places I'm going. And I just want to, I found it to be a very, very valuable part of my life. I highly recommend it. This is a painting I did in while I was flying to Great Britain. And so when I'm in places where like flying, which makes me very, very uncomfortable, I have found that, turning to creating things, it's a centering kind of activity.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is photography like that? I mean, you have your camera with you. It's like you carry your camera with you, like I carry my sketchbooks with me.
Yeah, I go through phases. I feel like because my background is in photography, but I don't always find it as like important to take photos, and I'm trying to actually like get away from like being on my phone when I'm like in a space and like having to have that urge to document stuff. But what I did do for a while, and what I still do, is I take take pieces from where I am. So I have that international water collection that's not international yet, but like if I'm in a park or if I go somewhere, and I like to camp alone and travel alone. It's,
where did you find this, Zoe? This is something that you picked up. Yeah, so this will end up in one of your photos.
I like collected all this trash when I have been going kayaking, and when I drove out here, that I want to incorporate into stuff. I pick up a lot of trash, and I use that in my art. Like a lot of the stuff that's on my Instagram is like found stuff in the street.
So kind of rather than going places and taking photographs, you're going places now and collecting little bits of that place, like discarded bits.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's kind of like It is
Sorry,
kind of like a document it's a way of documenting a place.
Yeah, it's really, it's not a minimalist lifestyle.
No.
I have a lot of rocks, and I have like all these jars of water from places that I like hold really special to me, or like, things like that. And in my sketchbook, I have a lot of like pressed leaves and or like leaf rubbings of like the concrete or parts of like rocks that I found. And I feel like that's kind of like it's like, yeah, it's similar to taking something from the environment that you are in and wanting to remember it that way. I think mine just might be a little bit more like cumbersome to carry around.
No, but you're taking it and you're transforming it.
Yeah, no, I like collecting, like, I think what people throw away is really interesting. And kind of like the trash that we have around us, like, tells so much about a person. Like, I like looking at receipts. I'll pick up receipts and like be like, oh, like, what did this person buy? And, like figuring, like making, I don't know, it's like creating little worlds too, but like out of random objects. I have a bunch of these like tiny, like, collection, like bead jars almost, that I got from the dollar store that I like put dirt in or sand in, or little random bugs, and I have them all floating around my studio and around my house, in my bedroom.
So it's kind of a research collection thing.
Yeah, no, I have a goal at the end of when I get like old, I'm gonna open up like a museum of water jars. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really into collections. I like what people get obsessive about, and kind of going back into psychology and the human mind and what people like, what people get obsessed about. I just like, I like trash and water. It's interesting. So.
Well, you liked business cards and coupons when you were little. You would stuff your crib with piles and piles of business cards and coupons, which was very.
I thought they were interesting.
They were interesting for like what, you're about 6 years old, maybe it wasn't a crib, it was your bunk bed that you stuffed all that stuff in. Go to make your bed, and all this stuff would fly out like feathers from a pillow. I'm not surprised that you like to collect things, actually. So, what?
But I don't know. Yeah, I did collect business cards. I was really into the different styles of business cards.
Yeah.
And they were just free at that time. I don't think business cards are as in now. They don't have like boards of business cards anymore in places, but they used to. Co-ops and things like that.
Well, everything's become digital. So again, you're going away from all that tactile stuff.
I mean, I look around your house. I wouldn't say that my collection development was on my own. You have like baskets of like things of stuff around too. So you hoard things too, like buttons.
No, okay, so
suitcases of buttons. And
I knew that the word hoarding was going to pop up here sooner or later. No, we'll go back to the idea that we both like to have collections and collect things that are interesting. There's a difference. The collecting aspect is far more healthy, and I applaud it.
It's just, you always work it back in somehow.
That's what the mother's supposed to do.
Fake AstroTurf.
AstroTurf is an undervalued art material that should have a bigger, more prominent place in the art world. It's gorgeous stuff, and now you can get all varieties.
I mean, I think with collecting stuff, there's like always, I don't know, I attribute personalities to like whatever I find. Do you find similar to the boxes of buttons and the reuse of materials and stuff?
Well, I mean, and then you and I both, we collect stuff and we put them, you know, I mean, I collect stuff and then I would say in my defense, I do use the stuff. A lot of what I make in fiber, particularly with fiber, this is a book that I made, and it's, is it upside down?
No.
But it's all got found imagery and found papers and things like that, and made with old sweaters. And so, you know, collecting does sometimes have a purpose. And you have to collect things, not knowing always when you're going to use it. So, you know, if you don't collect stuff, you won't have stuff for the future. So this is all just found materials, found old bed sheets.
Is it true that my old underwear from when I was a kid is somewhere in a doll?
Yes. But you and Ava. Old clothes are a great way to stuff fabric with. So you don't need to buy fiber fill. You can shove old scraps of your daughter's underwear. Barbie, like, you know, little tiny Barbie stuff. I have a doll that I made that has a little piece of my mother's underwear in it right up here. And this is an old pillowcase. Her head is made out of an old pillowcase and her body's made out of a cut up coat. And there's a pair of pants in here. So, I mean, everything's been, you know, I really believe in repurposing and reusing things, but I also put a lot of value in things that have a history.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time throwing things out. So yes, I will stuff little bits and pieces inside.
I feel like it's a way of remembering.
It's a way of what?
Like remembering.
Oh yeah.
And having it around. Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff around the house. I feel like it's
Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Zoe. You're a wonderful daughter. We should probably wrap it up.
We should announce who won the gift card.
Who won the gift card? I think it was Boo Crookie.
Yeah. So yay, gift card.
Yay!
And the pad thai is good.
Yeah.
The sweet potato fries. Also really
good. Okay.
Thank you for the chance to interview each other, and she invited me on, so it's all up to my mother, or it was all up to you guys. So thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.